The glint of gold coins caught the late afternoon sun as Abigail Lambert hastily tucked them back into her hidden pocket, unaware of the pair of watchful blue eyes that had spotted her small treasure from across the crowded saloon. It was 1882 in Tucumcari, New Mexico Territory, and Abigail had been counting the days and coins until she could finally leave this dusty frontier town behind. Abigail wiped her brow with the back of her hand, the summer heat making her linen dress cling uncomfortably to her skin as she balanced a tray of empty glasses. For 3 years, she had served drinks, endured wandering hands, and smiled through exhaustion at the frontier saloon, all while secretly tucking away every spare penny. Boston beckoned with promises of civilization, proper society, and most importantly, a teaching position her cousin had written about far from the hardscrabble existence of a saloon girl in the desert. "Need some help with that, Miss Abigail." The deep voice startled her, and she turned to find Adam Xavier standing behind her, his tall frame blocking the setting sun through the swinging doors. "I've managed these trays for years without your assistance, Mr. Xavier," she replied, lifting her chin slightly. "But thank you kindly for the offer." Adam Xavier was new to Tucumcari, arriving just 6 months prior to take over the struggling cattle ranch outside town. Unlike many of the rough cowboys who frequented the saloon, Adam carried himself with a quiet dignity that made heads turn. His clothes, while practical, were always clean, and despite the dust of ranch work, his dark hair and neatly trimmed beard gave him an air of respectability most men in Tucumcari lacked. "Just trying to be neighborly," he said with a slight smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. He stepped aside to let her pass, but his gaze lingered on her a moment too long. Abigail felt his eyes on her as she moved behind the bar. At 26, she was past the age when most women in the territory were already married with children, but she had different plans. She had refused 3 marriage proposals in Tucumcari, already all from men who saw her as little more than a convenient housekeeper who could warm their beds. None of them knew about her education, the years she had spent teaching children back east before family tragedy had stranded her here. "You dropped something earlier," Adam said casually as the evening crowd began to thin. He leaned against the bar, his voice low. "By the staircase, looked like a gold eagle." Abigail's heart seemed to stop in her chest. Her hand instinctively went to her hidden pocket, feeling the reassuring weight still there. "I don't know what you're talking about, Mr. Xavier." "No need to worry," he said, his voice dropping even lower. "Your secret's safe, but that's a fair amount of money for a saloon girl to be carrying." There was no accusation in his voice, merely curiosity. "I earn my wages honestly, if that's your concern," she replied stiffly, never doubted it for a moment. Adam tipped his hat slightly. "Just wondering what a lady with your refinement plans to do with such a nest egg in Tucumcari." Before she could formulate a response that wouldn't reveal too much, Hank Stillwell, the saloon owner, called for her to serve the corner table. Adam nodded a silent goodbye and stepped back, allowing her to continue her work. But as the night wore on, she felt his gaze follow her, thoughtful and disconcertingly perceptive. Later, when the saloon had emptied and Abigail climbed the stairs to her small room above, she carefully removed the loose floorboard beneath her bed and added the day's tips to her savings. She counted it all again, running her fingers over each coin. $87.42, nearly enough for the train ticket east and enough to sustain her until she secured the teaching position. After 3 long years of scrimping and saving, of avoiding the advances of drunken cowboys and turning down proposals that would have meant the death of her dreams, she was finally close. 2 more weeks, 3 at most, and she would bid Tucumcari goodbye forever. The next morning dawned bright and mercilessly hot, the kind of scorching day that made the wooden buildings of Tucumcari Creek and the horizon shimmer with heat waves. Abigail rose early as always, splashing water on her face from the chipped basin before dressing for her morning errands. The saloon wouldn't open until noon, giving her time to visit the general store and post office. The dusty Main Street was already stirring with activity when she stepped outside. Freight wagons lumbered past. Merchants opened their doors, and ranch hands who had spent the night in town nursed hangovers as they prepared for the ride back to their spreads. At the general store, Abigail was carefully selecting a small packet of tea, her one luxury, when the bell above the door jingled, announcing another customer. She didn't need to turn to know it was Adam Xavier. His distinctive spicy scent of saddle leather and bay rum aftershave gave him away. "Good morning, Miss Lambert," he said, removing his hat as he approached. In the daylight, she could see flecks of gold in his blue eyes, matching the sun's streaked brown of his hair. "Mr. Xavier," she acknowledged with a polite nod, suddenly conscious of her simple calico dress. "Might I have a word with you?" His expression was unexpectedly serious. "In private, if possible." Concern flickered through her. Had he told others about her savings? "I have errands to complete before my shift. It won't take long," he assured her. "It's about a business proposition." Curiosity overcame her hesitation. "Very well, I was heading to the post office next." They walked side by side down the wooden sidewalk, maintaining a respectable distance. Several townspeople nodded greetings, eyes lingering curiously on the unusual pair. "I'll be direct, Miss Lambert," Adam said once they were beyond earshot of others. "I need help at Cottonwood Ranch. My housekeeper, Mrs. Perkins, is returning east to care for her ailing sister. I find myself in need of someone with education and refinement to maintain the household," and he hesitated, "to tutor my younger brother." Abigail nearly stumbled in surprise. "Your brother? I wasn't aware you had family here." "Samuel arrived last week from Philadelphia. He's 18 and recovering from a bout of pneumonia that interrupted his schooling. I promised our late father I'd see to his education, but ranching leaves me little time for teaching." She regarded him skeptically. "And why would you offer such a position to a saloon girl, Mr. Xavier?" His gaze was steady. "Because unlike most in this town, I recognize quality when I see it. You speak like an educated woman. You carry yourself with dignity despite your circumstances, and I've seen you reading books behind the bar when you think no one's watching." Abigail felt oddly exposed, as though he had peered directly into her carefully guarded past. What would this position entail exactly? Room and board at the ranch, private quarters in the main house, and wages considerably better than what Hank Stillwell pays you. He named a sum that made her eyes widen slightly. "In exchange, you'd oversee the household, manage the kitchen, and spend afternoons tutoring Samuel in literature, mathematics, and history." It was a tempting offer. The wages would help her reach her goal faster, and teaching, even informally, was closer to her true calling than serving whiskey. But suspicion nagged at her. "And would there be other expectations?" she asked bluntly. Adam's expression hardened. "Miss Lambert, I'm offering you a position as a housekeeper and tutor, not as a mistress. I may be a rancher, but I was raised a gentleman." Abigail felt a flush of embarrassment. "Forgive me. In my experience, men rarely offer something for nothing." His expression softened. "No forgiveness needed. Your caution is understandable." He glanced at the post office ahead. "Think about it. The position is yours if you want it. I'll be at the Mercantile tomorrow morning at 9 if you're interested." With that, he replaced his hat with a nod and turned toward the livery stable, leaving Abigail standing in the dusty street, her mind racing with unexpected possibilities. That evening at the saloon, Abigail found herself distracted, accidentally mixing drinks and bumping into customers as her thoughts kept returning to Adam's offer. The wages he proposed would nearly double her savings rate. Boston could be a reality in weeks rather than months. "You're mighty preoccupied tonight," observed Clara, the other saloon girl, as they refilled their trays at the bar. "That handsome rancher gotten under your skin." "Don't be ridiculous," Abigail replied, perhaps too quickly. "Mr. Xavier merely offered me a position at his ranch." Clara's eyebrows shot up and she smirked knowingly. "As a housekeeper and tutor," Abigail clarified, feeling her cheeks warm. "Nothing improper." "Tutor," Clara repeated skeptically. "You," Abigail bit her lip, realizing she'd revealed more than intended. "I had some education back east." "Well, ain't that something?" Clara didn't look convinced. "Just be careful, Abby. Men like Xavier, educated types with money, they play by different rules than the cowboys around here. They break your heart with fancy words instead of whiskey and fists, but it breaks all the same. Later, as Abigail counted her meager tips for the night, Clara's warning echoed in her mind. But so did the memory of Adam's direct gaze and forthright manner. Something about him seemed genuine, unlike the false charm many men employed in the saloon. After a restless night weighing her options, Abigail found herself at the Mercantile at precisely 9 o'clock the next morning. Adam was examining a saddle when she entered, but he straightened immediately upon seeing her. "I accept your offer, Mr. Xavier," she said without preamble. "But I have conditions." If her directness surprised him, he didn't show it. "I'm listening. I'll require 1 day off each week. I expect to be treated with respect by all at the ranch, and I'll need written terms of employment." She took a deep breath. "And I reserve the right to leave with 2 weeks' notice if the situation becomes unsuitable." Adam's mouth quirked up at one corner. "Sensible terms, I agree to all of them." He extended his hand. "Shall we shake on it until I can draw up the formal agreement?" Somewhat startled by his easy acquiescence, Abigail placed her hand in his. His palm was warm and calloused, his grip firm but gentle. A peculiar sensation spread up her arm at the contact, the first time she had touched a man voluntarily in years. "When can you start?" he asked, releasing her hand after perhaps a moment too long. "I'll need to give Mr. Stillwell notice. I can come to the ranch in 3 days." Adam nodded. "I'll send the wagon for you and your belongings on Thursday morning." His eyes held her steadily. "Thank you for your trust, Miss Lambert. I promise it won't be misplaced." As Abigail walked back to the saloon to break the news to her employer, she wondered if she'd made the right decision or if she'd just traded one form of confinement for another. Only time would tell if Cottonwood Ranch would prove a step toward freedom or merely another detour on her journey east. The next 3 days passed in a flurry of preparations and pointed comments from Clara, who remained convinced Abigail was making a grave mistake. Hank Stillwell, the saloon owner, was predictably displeased to lose his most reliable employee, but couldn't argue with her right to seek better employment. "You'll be back," he predicted sourly as he paid her final wages. Fancy ranchers like Xavier don't keep saloon girls around once they've had their fill. Abigail refused to dignify the insinuation with a response. She packed her few belongings into a worn carpetbag, clothes, books, toiletries, and most importantly, her hidden savings, now sewn into the lining of an old shawl for safekeeping. Thursday morning arrived with a spectacular desert sunrise painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Abigail watched from her window, struck by a sudden awareness that this marked the first significant change in her circumstances since arriving in Tucumcari. Whether it would lead to Boston or some unforeseen path, at least it was movement forward. A sturdy wagon pulled by 2 chestnut horses stopped outside the saloon precisely at 8 o'clock. Adam himself handled the reins, looking more approachable in the morning light than she'd ever seen him, with his sleeves rolled up and his hat tipped back. "Ready for a new beginning, Miss Lambert?" He called up to her window, apparently spotting her watching. Flustered at being caught, Abigail retreated from view, gathering her bag and taking a final look around the small room that had been her home for 3 years. "As ready as I'll ever be," she murmured to herself. The ride to Cottonwood Ranch took nearly 2 hours, following the winding river through increasingly verdant landscape as they left the town behind. Adam proved to be a surprisingly comfortable conversationalist, pointing out landmarks and sharing the history of the region without pressing Abigail for details about her own past. "The ranch was failing when I purchased it last year," he explained as they crossed a wooden bridge. "Previous owner let the fences go to ruin and the cattle wandered, lost half his herd to rustlers and neglect." "What made you choose ranching?" Abigail asked, genuinely curious. "You don't strike me as someone born to it." Adam's hands flexed on the reins. "My father was a banker in Philadelphia. I was expected to follow him into finance, but I always longed for something less confined. After his death, I decided life was too short not to pursue my own path. He glanced at her. What about you, Miss Lambert? What brings a clearly educated woman to a place like Tucumcari? Abigail hesitated, then offered a partial truth. Family circumstances. My father died, leaving significant debts. My mother passed shortly after from grief. I had a teaching position in Massachusetts, but had to surrender it to settle affairs. My cousin in Tucumcari offered a temporary place to stay, but she moved on to California. I remained working at the saloon until I could save enough to. She trailed off, to return east. Adam finished for her, his perceptiveness unsettling. She nodded, uncertain why she'd revealed even that much. Teaching must be your calling, he observed. You light up when you mention it. Before she could respond, the wagon crested a small hill, and Cottonwood Ranch spread before them, a sprawling property nestled in a green valley, with a substantial two-story house built of sturdy timber and stone. Cottonwood trees lined the approach, providing welcome shade, while corrals, barns, and bunkhouses completed the picture of a well-established operation. It's beautiful, Abigail breathed, surprised by the scale and orderliness of the property. It's home, Adam said simply, a note of pride in his voice. Or at least I'm trying to make it one. As they approached the main house, a tall, slender young man emerged onto the porch, shading his eyes against the sun. The family resemblance between the brothers was immediately apparent, though Samuel Xavier lacked the weathered quality of his older sibling, his complexion still bearing the pallor of recent illness. "You must be Miss Lambert," Samuel called as Adam helped her down from the wagon. Adam's spoken of little else for days. "Samuel," Adam admonished, a rare flush coloring his tanned cheeks. "Miss Lambert is here as our housekeeper and your tutor. Show proper respect." Abigail found herself unexpectedly charmed by the younger Xavier's mischievous grin and his brother's discomfort. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Samuel. I understand we'll be working together on your studies." "Just Sam, please," he insisted. "And don't believe everything Adams told you about my educational deficiencies. I was top of my class before this cursed pneumonia. All the more reason not to waste that potential," Abigail replied with a smile already warming to her prospective student. Adam cleared his throat. "Perhaps I should show Miss Lambert to her quarters and acquaint her with the house before you overwhelm her, Sam." The interior of the ranch house surprised Abigail with its understated elegance. While not ostentatious, the furnishings were of quality craftsmanship, the floors covered with hand-woven rugs and the walls adorned with tasteful paintings of Western landscapes. It spoke of wealth applied with restraint and genuine appreciation rather than show. Her quarters proved equally unexpected: a generous bedroom with attached sitting room on the second floor, furnished with a proper bed, wardrobe, writing desk, and even a small bookshelf already stocked with volumes. Mrs. Perkins left some of her personal items behind, Adam explained, noting Abigail's stunned expression. "But I've had the room thoroughly cleaned and prepared for your arrival. The connecting door leads to a private washroom. Hot water can be brought up, or you may use the bathroom downstairs, which has modern plumbing." "This is more than I anticipated," Abigail admitted, running her fingers over the quilted bedspread. "I believe comfortable workers are loyal workers," Adam said simply. "Is it to your satisfaction?" "Very much so," she assured him, still taking in the unexpected luxury after years in her cramped room above the saloon. "Good, I'll leave you to settle in. Dinner is at 6. In the meantime, feel free to explore the house and grounds. Sam can show you around if you'd like." As Adam turned to leave, Abigail found herself calling after him. "Mr. Xavier." When he paused in the doorway, she continued, "Thank you for this opportunity. I'll do my best to earn the faith you've placed in me." Something flickered in his eyes, warmth mingled with an emotion she couldn't quite name. "I have no doubt you will, Miss Lambert." In the days that followed, Abigail settled into the rhythm of Cottonwood Ranch with surprising ease. The household duties were less demanding than she'd feared. The ranch employed a cook, Mrs. Diaz, who managed most of the meals, leaving Abigail to oversee the general upkeep and organization of the main house. Her afternoons were devoted to tutoring Sam, whose quick mind and genuine enthusiasm for learning made their sessions the highlight of her day. Despite his initial bravado, she discovered gaps in his education that she took satisfaction in filling, particularly in literature and history. Adam himself remained something of an enigma. He rose before dawn each day to work with his ranch hands, often returning only for dinner, covered in dust and clearly exhausted. Yet he always made time to inquire about Sam's progress and engage Abigail in conversation, displaying a breadth of knowledge that continued to surprise her. 2 weeks into her employment, Abigail was in the kitchen garden one morning, harvesting herbs with Mrs. Diaz when she heard hoofbeats approaching at speed. Shading her eyes, she saw Adam galloping toward the house, his expression urgent. "Trouble at the north pasture," he explained breathlessly as he dismounted. "Rustlers cut the fence overnight. We've lost at least 20 head." "Should I fetch the sheriff?" Abigail asked, immediately concerned. "No time. We need to track them now before the trail goes cold." Adam's eyes held hers. "I need to ask a favor. The men are already stretched thin with calving season. Could you ride out to the Phillips Ranch and ask Ben to send any hands he can spare? It's about 5 miles north." Abigail hesitated only briefly. "Of course. Which horse should I take?" Surprise flickered across Adam's face, quickly replaced by gratitude. "You can ride." "I grew up in rural Massachusetts, Mr. Xavier. I may prefer books, but I'm no stranger to horses." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Take Daisy from the near paddock. She's gentle but swift. Follow the north trail until you reach a fork marked by 3 standing stones, then bear right." Within 10 minutes, Abigail was galloping across the rangeland, her skirts hiked scandalously high to allow her to ride astride. The wind whipped her hair loose from its pins, and despite the serious nature of her mission, she found herself exhilarated by the speed and freedom of the ride. Ben Phillips, a grizzled rancher in his 50s, listened to her message with grave concern. "Damn rustlers are getting bold. Tell Adam I'll send 4 men right away. You riding back alone, miss?" "Yes, I should return to help Mrs. Diaz prepare food for the men when they return." Phillips nodded approvingly. "You're not what I expected when I heard Xavier hired a town woman. Got grit," he whistled for his foreman. "Jessie will accompany you back to Cottonwood. These ain't safe times for a woman alone." Despite her protests that she could manage, Abigail found herself riding back with the taciturn foreman, who maintained a respectful distance, but kept a watchful eye on their surroundings, his rifle across his saddle. They arrived to find the ranch in organized chaos, men preparing for what might become a prolonged pursuit, Mrs. Diaz directing kitchen staff packing food supplies, and Sam looking both excited and anxious as he helped load ammunition. Adam strode from the barn at their approach, relief visible on his face when he spotted Abigail. "Phillips sending help. 4 men following directly behind us," she confirmed, dismounting with a wince. The unaccustomed riding had left her muscles protesting. "You're a godsend, Miss Lambert," Adam said with genuine gratitude, his hand briefly touching her shoulder. "We'll likely be gone overnight. Sam knows the routine, but we'll manage perfectly well," she assured him. "Please be careful, Mr. Xavier. Cattle can be replaced, you cannot." Something shifted in his expression, surprise, followed by a warmth that reached his eyes. "I'll bear that in mind." As promised, Adam and his men didn't return until late the following day. They recovered most of the stolen cattle, but returned without catching the rustlers, who had apparently split up and headed toward the territorial border. Over dinner that evening, Adam recounted the pursuit while Abigail listened attentively, noting the shadows under his eyes and the weariness in his movements. When Sam excused himself to finish an essay she'd assigned, they found themselves alone in the dining room. "You should rest," Abigail suggested gently. "You look exhausted." "Too much to do," Adam sighed, running a hand through his dusty hair. "Need to reinforce the north fencing, increase night patrols." "Which you can address after proper sleep," she insisted, surprising herself with her boldness. "The ranch won't benefit from a leader too tired to think clearly." He studied her with that penetrating gaze that always made her feel strangely seen. You're right, of course. Sam mentioned you've been a positive influence these past weeks, said you're the best teacher he's ever had. Abigail felt a flush of pleasure. He's a bright young man. It's a joy to teach someone so eager to learn. Unlike his stubborn older brother. Adam's mouth quirked in that half-smile that was becoming increasingly familiar. I didn't say that, she protested, then added more softly, though I suspect you could benefit from occasionally heeding advice. To her relief, he chuckled rather than taking offense. Fair assessment. Mrs. Perkins used to say I was more hard-headed than the most obstinate steer. His expression grew more serious. Thank you, Miss Lambert, not just for today, but for everything you've brought to Cottonwood. The house feels different with you here. Different, she echoed, unsure of his meaning. More like a home, he said simply, then stood, clearly uncomfortable with his own candor. Good night, Miss Lambert. As Adam walked away, Abigail remained seated, a curious warmth spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with the lingering heat of the day. She told herself it was merely satisfaction at a job well done, but in the privacy of her mind, she acknowledged an unsettling truth. She was beginning to care for the Xavier brothers in a way that complicated her carefully laid plans. That night, alone in her comfortable room, she removed her savings from their hiding place and counted them again by lamplight. With the generous wages Adam paid, she now had enough for her ticket east, with ample funds to establish herself in Boston. Yet somehow the coins didn't bring the same rush of anticipation they once had. Don't be foolish, she whispered to herself as she returned the money to its hiding place. This isn't your home, it's just a temporary arrangement, a means to an end. But as she drifted to sleep, her dreams were not of Boston's brick buildings and cultured society, but of open rangeland, cottonwood trees by a flowing river, and a pair of blue eyes creased at the corners by a rare, genuine smile. The weeks stretched into months, and summer gave way to autumn with its cooler temperatures and spectacular sunsets. Under Abigail's tutelage, Sam's education progressed remarkably, to the point where Adam began discussing the possibility of sending him to university the following year. He could attend my alma mater in Philadelphia, Adam mused one evening as they sat on the porch after dinner, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. These twilight conversations had become an unexpected tradition, a quiet moment at day's end when they could speak freely. Sam certainly has the intellect for it, Abigail agreed, her knitting needles clicking softly as she worked. Though I think he's developed more interest in agricultural science than the law you studied, Adam chuckled. You've noticed that too. He follows me around the ranch asking questions about crop rotation and breeding programs. Not exactly the banking career our father envisioned for either of us. You've given him something precious, Abigail said softly, the freedom to discover his own path. Adam turned to study her in the fading light. Is that what you seek, Miss Lambert? Your own path? The directness of the question caught her off guard. After nearly 3 months at Cottonwood, Adam still referred to her formally as Miss Lambert, though she had begun thinking of him as Adam in the privacy of her mind. I suppose we're all searching for where we truly belong, she answered carefully. And do you believe that place is Boston? His voice was casual, but something in his eyes suggested the question held deeper significance. Before she could formulate a response, Sam burst onto the porch, excited about a passage in his astronomy text, and the moment passed. But later, alone in her room, Abigail found herself pondering Adam's question with unexpected uncertainty. The truth was, life at Cottonwood Ranch had begun to feel disconcertingly comfortable. She enjoyed her work, appreciated the respect she received, and had grown genuinely fond of Sam. As for Adam, her feelings there had developed into something complicated and increasingly difficult to ignore. She had noticed the way her pulse quickened when he entered a room, how she found excuses to seek his opinion on household matters, how their conversations had gradually deepened from polite exchanges to meaningful discussions about books, politics, and philosophy. Sometimes she caught him watching her with an expression that made her wonder if he might feel a similar attraction. but she reminded herself sternly that such feelings could only lead to complication. Her plan remained unchanged: save enough money, return east, reclaim the teaching career that was her true calling. Attachment to Cottonwood or its owner could only divert her from that goal. October brought cattle buyers from Chicago, keeping Adam busy with business negotiations while Abigail managed an increasing load of household responsibilities. The ranch was preparing to host a harvest dinner for neighboring ranchers and their families, an annual tradition, Adam explained, that helped cement alliances important for mutual protection and support through the coming winter. "I've ordered new curtains and linens for the dining room," Abigail informed Adam as they reviewed preparations one afternoon in his study. "And Mrs. Diaz has planned an impressive menu. I'm sure everything will be perfect," he said, distracted by the ledger before him. "You've proven remarkably capable at running this household." "High praise indeed," she teased, trying to lighten his serious mood. He looked up, seeming to truly see her for the first time that day. "It's not mere praise, Miss Lambert, it's sincere appreciation." He hesitated, then added, "I've come to depend on you in ways I hadn't anticipated." Something in his tone made her breath catch. "I'm merely fulfilling my duties as housekeeper. We both know you've become far more than that to this household." Adam closed the ledger and stood, moving around the desk until they were standing uncomfortably close. "To Sam, to me," Abigail felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Mr. Xavier, Adam," he corrected softly. "Surely after all these months you might use my given name, at least in private." "Adam," she conceded, the name feeling strangely intimate on her tongue. "I think perhaps we should focus on the preparations for the harvest dinner." Disappointment flickered across his face, but he nodded, stepping back to a more appropriate distance. "Of course, forgive my presumption." The harvest dinner itself proved a resounding success. The main house had never looked more inviting, with autumn flowers decorating tables, lanterns casting warm light across the expanded dining room, and delicious aromas wafting from the kitchen. Nearly 30 guests attended, including neighboring ranchers, the town doctor, and even the mayor of Tucumcari with his wife. Abigail, dressed in her finest gown, a deep blue silk she'd preserved from her Eastern life, found herself the object of curious attention. Her position at Cottonwood had sparked inevitable gossip in town, but seeing her confidently directing servants and conversing intelligently with guests seemed to dispel the more unsavory rumors. "You've worked wonders with this place," Ben Phillips commented as she refreshed his coffee. "Xavier made a smart move bringing you here." "Thank you, Mr. Phillips," she replied with a polite smile. "Cottonwood is a fine property. It practically manages itself." "Nonsense," interjected Mrs. Phillips, a no-nonsense woman with shrewd eyes. "A house this size needs a woman's touch." "I've told Adam as much for months." She gave Abigail a meaningful look, though I suspect he's figured that out for himself. Before Abigail could respond to this rather pointed observation, Adam appeared at her elbow. "Miss Lambert, would you assist me in the library? Mayor Thompson is interested in that book on territorial history we discussed last week." Grateful for the timely rescue, she excused herself and followed Adam. But instead of heading to the library, he guided her onto the side porch, where the cool night air provided a welcome respite from the crowded dining room. "You looked like you needed escape," he explained, offering her a glass of punch he'd apparently prepared in advance. "The Phillips can be overwhelming in there, matchmaking enthusiasm." Abigail accepted the punch, careful not to let their fingers touch. "They mean well, I'm sure. They do." Adam leaned against the porch railing, his profile limned by moonlight. "But they fail to recognize that some situations are more complex than they appear." The statement hung in the air between them, laden with unspoken implications. Abigail took a sip of punch to steady herself. "Indeed, people often see what they wish to see rather than what is." "And what is the reality, Abigail?" He turned to face her fully, using her given name for the first time. "Between us," her heart hammered against her ribs, "I'm your employee. You've been a kind and fair employer. That's all there can be." "Is it?" Adam stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the faint scent of bay rum that always clung to him. "I've respected your boundaries these past months. I've tried to keep a proper distance. But I think we both know there's something more here than an employer and his housekeeper." "Adam, please," she whispered, torn between the urge to step away and the conflicting desire to move closer. "Even if there were feelings, it wouldn't change anything. I have plans, a future I've worked toward for years." "Plans can change," he said softly. "Futures can be reimagined." "Not mine." She set down her glass with a trembling hand. "I should return to the guests." Adam didn't try to stop her as she moved past him, but his voice followed her. "Running away doesn't make feelings disappear, Abigail. Believe me, I've tried." The remainder of the evening passed in a blur of social niceties and forced smiles. Abigail avoided being alone with Adam again, using her duties as hostess as a shield against further conversation. Later, as she prepared for bed, a soft knock sounded at her door. Wrapping her dressing gown tighter, she opened it to find Sam standing there, looking uncharacteristically serious. "I'm sorry to disturb you, Miss Lambert, but I wanted to give you this before I forgot." He held out a small package wrapped in brown paper. "It's a thank you gift for everything you've taught me. I know I'm not always the easiest student." Touched by the gesture, Abigail unwrapped the package to find a beautiful leather-bound journal, its cover tooled with an intricate design of cottonwood leaves. "Sam, it's beautiful," she said sincerely, "but completely unnecessary." "I noticed your old one is nearly full," he explained with a shy smile. "You're always writing in it during your free time. Adam helped me pick it out last time we were in Santa Fe." The revelation that Adam had been involved in selecting such a thoughtful gift stirred emotions she was trying desperately to suppress. "That was very observant of you both." Sam shifted uncomfortably. "There's something else I should tell you. Adam's been offered a position on the Territorial Cattle Association Board. It would mean more travel, more responsibilities." "That's a significant honor," Abigail said, wondering why Sam looked so troubled by the news. "He's considering turning it down." Sam met her eyes directly. "Because of you, me, I don't understand. He thinks you'll leave once you've saved enough money. He won't say it outright, but I know he's afraid if he's away more often, you'll have no reason to stay." Sam's perceptiveness was sometimes startling for one so young. "He cares for you, Miss Lambert, more than he's admitted to anyone, even himself probably." Abigail felt as though the floor had tilted beneath her. "Sam, this isn't appropriate, I know, not my business." He backed toward the door. "But Adam's the best man I know. He deserves happiness. And I think you make him happy." With that parting statement, he slipped away, leaving Abigail standing in the doorway, clutching the journal and battling a rising tide of emotion. Sleep eluded her that night. She paced her room, thoughts churning as she tried to reconcile her long-held dreams with the unexpected feelings that had taken root at Cottonwood. Shortly before dawn, she made a decision. When Adam came downstairs for breakfast, Abigail was waiting in his study, her back straight, her resolve firm despite her sleepless night. "We need to speak privately," she said without preamble. Surprise flickered across his face, but he nodded, closing the door behind him. "What's troubling you, Abigail?" "I think it's best if I tender my resignation," she said, the words painful to speak despite her determination. "I've saved sufficient funds for my journey east. It's time I pursued the teaching position in Boston as planned." Adam went very still, his expression shuddering closed. "I see. May I ask what's prompted this sudden decision?" "It's not sudden. It's been my intention all along, as you well know." "Is this because of what I said last night? If I made you uncomfortable?" "No," she interrupted. "Or not entirely. This situation has become complicated, my feelings." She faltered, unable to articulate the conflict within her. "Your feelings?" he prompted softly, a flicker of hope lighting his eyes. Abigail gathered her courage. "I've developed an attachment to Cottonwood, to Sam, to you. It would be dishonest to pretend otherwise." She took a steadying breath. "But attachment wasn't part of my plan. I have responsibilities to myself, dreams I've sacrificed for." "Dreams can change," Adam said, echoing his words from the previous night. He stepped closer, caution evident in his movements. Or perhaps they can expand to include new possibilities. You don't understand, she insisted, frustration edging her voice. Teaching isn't just a job to me, it's my calling. I spent years training for it, believing in it. I lost it once through circumstances beyond my control. I won't abandon it again. I would never ask you to abandon your calling, Adam said, his voice gentle but firm, but I wonder if you've considered that callings can be fulfilled in many ways. Abigail frowned. What do you mean? Tucumcari has no proper school. Children learn from parents or travel to larger settlements for education. There's a need here, a community that could benefit from someone with your training and passion. The suggestion caught her completely off guard. You mean, start a school here? In New Mexico territory? Why not? The territory is growing, families are settling, every community needs education. His expression softened. And selfishly, I admit I'm looking for reasons to convince you to stay, not as my housekeeper, but as— He hesitated, then pressed on. As someone who might consider building a future here, with me. Abigail felt as though the ground had shifted beneath her feet. Adam, I'm not proposing marriage this instant, he clarified quickly. That would be presumptuous when we've only just begun to acknowledge these feelings. But I am asking you to consider the possibility that your dreams and mine might not be mutually exclusive. The sincerity in his eyes was unmistakable. This wasn't the casual interest of a man seeking a convenient arrangement. It was deeper, more thoughtful, the beginning of something that could grow into love if given the chance. I need time, she said finally. This isn't a decision I can make impulsively. Of course. Relief washed across his features. Take all the time you need, just don't leave yet, please. That single word, please, held such honest vulnerability that Abigail found herself nodding. I'll stay through the winter at least. Beyond that, I can't promise anything. That's all I ask. He reached for her hand, and this time she allowed the contact, feeling the rough warmth of his palm against hers. Thank you, Abigail. As October gave way to November, life at Cottonwood settled into a new rhythm. Abigail continued her duties, but subtle changes marked her relationship with Adam. Their evening conversations grew longer, more personal. Occasionally, his hand would brush hers as they walked, or he would rest his palm briefly at the small of her back when helping her into the wagon for Sunday trips to town. Meanwhile, she began discreetly investigating the possibility of establishing a school in Tucumcari. To her surprise, the idea received enthusiastic support from several quarters. The town's few professional families expressed immediate interest, and even some of the ranchers with young children showed cautious approval. Mayor Thompson has offered the use of the old meeting hall, Abigail reported to Adam one evening as they sat before the fire in the library, a chessboard between them. It would need renovation, but the structure is sound. That's promising, Adam replied, studying the board before moving his knight. What about funding, teachers' salary, supplies? Families would pay tuition, of course, but I'm also writing to the Territorial Education Board about possible grants. She captured his pawn with a deft move. It's still preliminary, but more feasible than I initially thought. Adam smiled, his eyes reflecting the firelight. You've been giving this serious consideration. It would be irresponsible not to explore all options, she said carefully, unwilling to commit herself fully to the idea. Check, by the way, he chuckled, redirecting his attention to the game. You're a formidable opponent, Miss Lambert, in chess and in life. The winter of 1882 arrived with unexpected ferocity, bringing heavy snows that isolated Cottonwood Ranch for days at a time. With outdoor work limited, Adam spent more time at the house, often joining Abigail and Sam for afternoon lessons or helping with indoor projects. During one particularly fierce blizzard that howled around the eaves of the house for 3 days straight, the three of them established a routine of reading aloud by the fire in the evenings. Sam often retired early, leaving Adam and Abigail alone in the library's cozy warmth. On the third night of the storm, after Sam had gone upstairs, an unusual nervousness seemed to overtake Adam. He rose frequently to add logs to the fire or refill their tea cups, his usual composure disrupted by some internal agitation. Is something troubling you? Abigail finally asked, setting aside the copy of Dickens they'd been reading. Adam paused in his restless movement, visibly gathering himself before returning to his chair opposite hers. I received a letter last week before the storm, from the school board in Boston. Abigail's heart seemed to stumble in her chest. You wrote to the Boston School Board. Why? To inquire about the teaching position you mentioned, your cousin's letter about an opening. He met her startled gaze directly. I wanted to understand exactly what you'd be giving up if you stayed in New Mexico. That was presumptuous, she said, unsure whether to be angry or touched by his investigation. Perhaps, he acknowledged, but I needed to know the truth. The truth about what? About whether this position actually exists. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a folded letter, offering it to her. Read it, please. With trembling fingers, Abigail unfolded the paper. It was indeed from the Boston School Committee, formally addressed to Mr. Adam Xavier. The content was brief but clear. They had no record of any teaching position being held for an Abigail Lambert, nor had any such arrangement been discussed with any cousin or other relation. Furthermore, all current positions were filled by long-term instructors with no planned departures. Abigail stared at the letter, hot shame washing through her. I don't understand. My cousin Emily wrote clearly that she had spoken with the headmaster, that he remembered me from teachers' college and would hold a position. When did you last have direct correspondence with your cousin? Adam asked gently. Nearly 2 years ago, Abigail admitted, her voice small. Her last letter mentioned she was moving to San Francisco with her new husband. I sent replies to her previous address but never received answers. I assumed she was simply busy with her new life. Adam leaned forward, his expression compassionate rather than accusatory. Is it possible the position was genuine when she wrote, but circumstances changed? Or perhaps she exaggerated the certainty to give you hope during a difficult time? Abigail pressed her hands to her face, mortification flooding through her. For years, she had clung to this promise of return, had based every decision on eventually reclaiming the teaching career that awaited her in Boston. To discover now that it had been a phantom, a well-intentioned fiction, or a plan that had dissolved with time and distance was devastating. Everything I've worked for, she whispered, dropping her hands to reveal eyes bright with unshed tears. All the saving, the planning. Based on a dream that doesn't exist. No, Adam said firmly, moving to kneel beside her chair. Based on your genuine calling to teach, that hasn't changed. He took her hands in his. The location, the specific position, those are details. Your passion, your gift for education, those are real. She looked at him through blurred vision. Why are you being kind about this? I've been a fool. You've been holding on to hope, he corrected. There's no shame in that. His thumbs traced gentle circles on her palms. And selfishly, I can't help but see this as an opportunity. An opportunity. For you to consider that perhaps your future lies here, not in Boston, that the school Tucumcari needs could be your true calling. He paused, gathering courage, that there might be room in your heart for more than one dream. The tenderness in his voice undid her last defenses. The tears she'd been fighting spilled over, tracking silently down her cheeks. Adam reached up to brush them away, his touch achingly gentle. I'm not asking for an answer tonight, he murmured. Just the knowledge that you'll truly consider all possibilities now, without the shadow of Boston hanging over every thought. Abigail nodded, unable to speak through the knot of emotion in her throat. Adam rose, pressed a soft kiss to her forehead, their first such intimate contact, and quietly left the library, giving her space to process this seismic shift in her understanding. Later that night, Abigail retrieved her hidden savings, spreading the coins across her bedspread in the lamplight. What had once represented escape now seemed like physical evidence of years chasing a mirage. Yet as she traced the worn edges of a gold eagle, a new perspective began to take shape in her mind. This money could still represent freedom, not the freedom to leave, but the freedom to choose. To build something new, a school for Tucumcari, a future not constrained by past disappointments or false promises, and perhaps a future that included Adam Xavier, whose steady presence and quiet strength had become as essential to her as breathing. Christmas at Cottonwood Ranch brought an unexpected thaw, both in the weather and in Abigail's resolve. The house was festooned with evergreen boughs and red ribbons, filling the air with the crisp scent of pine. Sam had thrown himself into holiday preparations with boyish enthusiasm, insisting on traditional observances from special foods to the exchange of gifts. On Christmas Eve, after attending services in town, the three of them gathered in the library where a tall spruce tree sparkled with candles and ornaments Adam had ordered specially from Denver. The scene was so perfectly domestic that Abigail felt a pang of bittersweet joy, knowing this might be her only Christmas at Cottonwood if she still chose to leave in spring. "Time for gifts," Sam announced, distributing packages with the excitement of a much younger boy. Abigail had knitted Sam a warm scarf in the colors of the Philadelphia University he hoped to attend. And for Adam, she had spent weeks secretly creating a leather-bound album filled with pressed wildflowers and sketches of Cottonwood Ranch through the seasons. "This is extraordinary," Adam murmured as he turned the pages carefully. "You've captured the soul of this place." "It's become dear to me," she admitted softly. "I wanted you to have something to remember." She trailed off, but the unspoken "me" hung in the air between them. Adam's eyes held hers for a long moment before he set the album carefully aside and reached for a small package. "For you," he said, placing it in her hands, "though it comes with something of an explanation." Curious, Abigail unwrapped the gift to reveal a small wooden box, intricately carved with the same cottonwood leaf pattern as her journal from Sam. Inside, nestled on velvet, lay an antique gold locket on a delicate chain. "It's beautiful," she breathed, lifting it to examine the detailed engraving. "It was my mother's," Adam explained. "The last gift my father gave her before she passed." He hesitated, then continued, "I'm not giving it to you as jewelry alone, but as a symbol of intention. Of hope for a future together." Sam suddenly became very interested in examining his new books, tactfully moving to the far side of the room to give them privacy. "Adam," Abigail began, uncertain how to respond to such a meaningful gift. "I'm not asking for a formal commitment tonight," he assured her quickly. "I understand you're still deciding what path to take, but I want you to know that whenever you're ready, if you choose to stay, I'm prepared to offer you not just my heart, but a partnership in every sense." The depth of emotion in his voice stole her breath. This was no casual courtship, no convenient arrangement. This was a man offering his whole self, his future, his dreams intertwined with hers. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to the locket. When she nodded, he took it from the box and moved behind her chair to fasten it around her neck. His fingers brushed the sensitive skin at her nape, sending a shiver down her spine. "Perfect," he murmured, returning to face her, "as though it was made for you." The weight of the locket against her collarbone felt significant, like a physical manifestation of the choice before her. She touched it gently, feeling its warmth. "Thank you, I'll treasure it, regardless of what the future brings." Adam nodded, understanding the careful boundaries she still maintained. But as their eyes met over the glow of the Christmas candles, something shifted between them, a silent acknowledgement that the direction of her heart, if not yet fully decided, had begun to incline decidedly toward Cottonwood. January brought renewed activity to the ranch as the weather improved enough for regular travel. Abigail, with Adam's encouragement, began making formal inquiries about establishing a school in Tucumcari. She met with Mayor Thompson, drafted proposals for the territorial board, and even organized an informational gathering for prospective students' families. 15 families have expressed interest already, she reported excitedly one evening, poring over her notes at the dining table after dinner. With multiple children from most households, we could begin with nearly 30 students across various ages. Adam watched her with undisguised admiration. "You've accomplished more in 3 weeks than most could in 3 months." "I've had excellent support," she acknowledged, glancing up with a smile. "Your letter to the governor's office regarding territorial funding was particularly helpful. merely practical assistance. The vision is entirely yours." Their eyes held for a moment too long, that increasingly familiar current of attraction humming between them. Over the past weeks, such moments had grown more frequent, their relationship gradually shifting toward something that, while still proper, held the unmistakable promise of deeper intimacy. In early February, Adam announced he needed to travel to Santa Fe on business. "The Cattle Association meeting can't be postponed again," he explained over breakfast. "I'll be gone about 10 days. "We'll manage perfectly well," Abigail assured him, ignoring the pang of disappointment at the thought of his absence. "Won't we, Sam?" Sam nodded, though he looked equally disappointed. "I'll keep up with my studies and help around the ranch." "I know you will," Adam said with obvious pride in his brother. He turned to Abigail. "There's one more thing. The territorial education superintendent will be at this meeting. I'd like to present your school proposal personally if you're agreeable." Abigail's eyes widened. "That would be tremendously helpful, but are you certain you want to take that responsibility? Consider it an investment in Tucumcari's future." Adam replied with a smile that suggested he was investing in more than just the community. The day of Adam's departure dawned clear and cold. Abigail rose early to ensure his traveling provisions were properly packed, and breakfast was ready before the long ride to catch the eastbound train. As he prepared to mount his horse, Adam lingered, seemingly reluctant to leave. "I've left detailed instructions with the foreman." "If anything concerns you, Adam," she interrupted gently, "we'll be fine. This isn't the first time you've traveled for business, but it's the first time since." He trailed off, gesturing vaguely between them, unable to put a name to the evolving connection they shared. Abigail felt a rush of affection for this capable man who could manage a sprawling ranch and territorial business affairs, yet seemed genuinely concerned about leaving her for a mere 10 days. "Since we've acknowledged that there might be something between us beyond employer and employee." She supplied with a small smile. He nodded, looking relieved that she'd named it. "Precisely. Then let me ease your mind." She took a step closer, lowering her voice though no one was near. "I will be here when you return, Adam, with answers to the questions between us." Hope bloomed in his eyes. "You've made your decision." "I'm very close," she admitted. "These days alone will give me the clarity to be certain." Adam looked as though he wanted to say more, perhaps even to kiss her, but propriety still governed their interactions. Instead, he took her hand and pressed it warmly between both of his. "Until I return, then," he said, his voice carrying a depth of promise that made her pulse quicken. Abigail watched him ride away, standing on the porch until his figure disappeared beyond the cottonwoods. Only then did she acknowledge the flutter of anticipation in her chest. She had been truthful. These days would indeed give her the space to make her final decision. But in her heart, she already knew what answer she would give him upon his return. The first week of Adam's absence passed uneventfully. Abigail divided her time between household management, Sam's lessons, and refining her school proposals. She found herself missing Adam's presence more than she'd anticipated: the sound of his boots in the hallway, their evening conversations, even the way he took his coffee at breakfast. On the 8th day, as a late winter storm gathered on the horizon, an unexpected visitor arrived at Cottonwood. Abigail was reviewing household accounts in the study when Mrs. Diaz announced that Sheriff Morales was at the door, looking concerned. "Miss Lambert," the sheriff greeted her, removing his hat. "Sorry to disturb you. Is Mr. Xavier available?" "He's in Santa Fe until tomorrow or the day after," Abigail explained, immediately anxious at the lawman's grave expression. "Has something happened?" The sheriff glanced at Sam, who had appeared in the doorway, then back to Abigail. "Perhaps we could speak privately." With growing dread, Abigail led him into the study, closing the door behind them. "Please tell me what's wrong, Sheriff." "There's been an incident on the Santa Fe rail line," he said without preamble. "Derailment about 50 miles east of here. Train carrying passengers and freight from Santa Fe to Chicago." Abigail felt the blood drain from her face. "Adam was on that train, returning from the Cattle Association meeting." Sheriff Morales nodded grimly. I figured as much, that's why I came directly. Details are still coming in by telegraph, but it appears several cars went off the tracks in a ravine, some casualties reported. The room seemed to tilt around her. Casualties, she repeated, the word barely a whisper. Deaths and injuries, the sheriff confirmed. No complete list of names yet. Rescue efforts are underway, but the location is remote and with this storm approaching. He trailed off, the implications clear. Abigail gripped the edge of the desk for support, her mind racing with terrible possibilities. What can we do? Not much at present, I'm afraid. The nearest town is sending doctors and supplies. Army detachment from Fort Sumner is assisting. He placed his hat back on his head. I'll bring word as soon as I have more information. Just thought you should know, prepare yourselves for any possibility. After the sheriff departed, Abigail stood frozen in the study, terror and grief battling for supremacy. Then Sam's voice from the doorway broke through her paralysis. It's Adam, isn't it? Something's happened to him. She turned to find the young man pale but composed, his eyes seeking truth rather than false comfort. In that moment, he looked remarkably like his brother. We don't know anything for certain, she said, striving for a calmness she didn't feel. The train Adam was likely traveling on has derailed. There are casualties, but also survivors. Until we have more information, we must hope for the best while preparing ourselves for difficult news. Sam nodded, his jaw set in a determined line. What do we do now? His practical question anchored her, providing focus when panic threatened to overwhelm. We wait for information. We keep the ranch running as Adam would expect, and we pray if you're so inclined. For the next 2 days, Cottonwood Ranch existed in a state of suspended animation. Outwardly, routines continued, meals were served, chores completed, lessons conducted. But an atmosphere of tense anticipation pervaded every interaction. Abigail found herself moving between moments of practical efficiency and periods of overwhelming fear. She organized the household, maintained Sam's schedule, and communicated with the ranch foreman, all while fighting waves of terror at the thought that Adam might be gone forever, that she might have lost him before she'd had the chance to tell him she loved him. For she did love him, she realized with painful clarity. Somewhere between their first meeting at the saloon and now, Adam Xavier had become essential to her happiness, her future, her very sense of self. The possibility of a world without him was unbearable. On the morning of the third day, as Abigail stood at the kitchen window watching an ominous snowstorm gather on the horizon, the sound of approaching horses drew her attention. Sheriff Morales had returned, accompanied by Dr. Whitman from town. She rushed to the door, Sam close behind her, her heart pounding so violently she felt light-headed. The sheriff's expression was unreadable as he dismounted. "Miss Lambert," he began, removing his hat, "we've received a complete list of casualties from the derailment." Abigail couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. She simply waited, her entire future hanging on the sheriff's next words. "Adam Xavier was not among the dead," he said finally. "According to reports, he sustained injuries but was among those transported to the hospital in Las Vegas." Relief crashed through her with such force that her knees nearly buckled. "He's alive," she whispered. "Thank God. The doctor here has offered to accompany you to Las Vegas if you wish to go to him," the sheriff continued. "Though I should warn you, the journey won't be easy with this storm approaching." "I don't care," Abigail said immediately. "I must go to him. How soon can we leave?" Dr. Whitman stepped forward. "Within the hour, if you can be ready. We'll take the wagon as far as we can, then catch the westbound train if it's running. The sooner we depart, the better chance we have of beating the worst of the storm." Turning to Sam, Abigail saw her own determination reflected in his eyes. "Pack what you need," she told him. "Warm clothing, only essentials. You want me to come too?" he asked, surprised. "Of course, he's your brother, we'll go together." She squeezed his shoulder gently. This is what families do. As they prepared for the journey, Abigail's mind kept returning to that word family. Not by blood or marriage, but by something equally powerful: choice, commitment, love. Somewhere along the way, the Xaviers had become her family. And now, with Adam injured and vulnerable, nothing would keep her from his side. The journey to Las Vegas proved as difficult as the sheriff had warned. The wagon struggled through increasingly heavy snow for hours until they reached the nearest train station, only to find the westbound train delayed by weather. When it finally arrived, the overcrowded cars offered little comfort for the tense 3-hour trip. Throughout the ordeal, Abigail maintained a facade of calm competence for Sam's benefit, though inwardly she was consumed with worry. The sheriff had no details about Adam's injuries beyond the fact that they weren't immediately fatal. He could be recovering well or fighting for his life. It was nearly midnight when they finally reached Las Vegas and made their way to the hospital, a recently constructed 2-story building near the town center. Despite the late hour, the facility buzzed with activity as medical staff continued treating victims from the derailment. "We're looking for Adam Xavier," Abigail told the harried nurse at the reception desk. "He was brought in from the train accident," the nurse consulted a ledger. "Xavier, yes, 2nd floor, room 12. Dr. Martinez is attending physician," she gave them a tired smile. "Family only at this hour." "We are family," Sam said firmly, and this time it wasn't a fiction or a convenient explanation, it was the simple truth. Room 12 was dimly lit by a single lamp when they entered. Adam lay still in the narrow bed, his face pale against the white pillowcase, a bandage wrapped around his head and his left arm immobilized in a splint. For a terrible moment, Abigail feared they'd arrived too late, until she saw the steady rise and fall of his chest. "Adam," Sam whispered, approaching the bed cautiously. Abigail hung back, suddenly overcome with emotion relief that he was alive, fear at how still he looked, and an overwhelming surge of love that nearly brought her to her knees. A gray-haired doctor entered behind them, his expression questioning until they introduced themselves. "Ah, the family from Tucumcari. Good, good. He's been asking for you when conscious." "How serious are his injuries?" Abigail asked, finding her voice at last. "Significant but not life-threatening," Dr. Martinez assured them. "Concussion, broken arm, 3 cracked ribs, various contusions. He was fortunate his car partially derailed but didn't overturn completely. Others were not so lucky." "Will he recover fully?" Sam asked, the worry of a boy who had already lost both parents evident in his voice. "With proper rest and care, yes, though the journey home will need to wait until he's stronger." The doctor yawned, apologizing. "Forgive me, it's been a long 3 days. You may stay with him if you wish. There's a cot for family members." After the doctor left, Sam pulled a chair to Adam's bedside while Abigail finally approached the bed. Up close, the evidence of trauma was more apparent: bruising along his jaw, a cut across his forehead disappearing beneath the bandage, his normally tanned complexion ashen. Gently, she took his uninjured right hand in hers, relieved to find it warm. "We're here, Adam," she murmured. "Sam and I have come for you." Whether it was coincidence or her voice penetrated his unconsciousness, Adam's eyelids fluttered at that moment. He didn't wake fully, but his fingers tightened slightly around hers, a response that sent hope surging through her. For the next several hours, Abigail and Sam maintained their vigil. The younger Xavier eventually dozed in his chair, but Abigail remained awake, watching Adam's face for any sign of returning awareness, her hand still holding his. Dawn was breaking, pale light filtering through the window when Adam finally opened his eyes. For a moment he seemed disoriented, his gaze unfocused. Then his eyes found Abigail and recognition dawned. "Abigail," he whispered, his voice hoarse, "you're really here. I thought I dreamed it." "I'm here," she confirmed, tears welling in her eyes. "Sam too." She nodded toward the sleeping young man. Adam's gaze drifted to his brother, a smile touching his lips despite obvious pain. "You came all this way through the storm." "Wild horses couldn't have kept us away," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "When we heard about the accident, I was so afraid." She couldn't continue, emotion closing her throat. "I'm not so easily gotten rid of," Adam murmured, attempting humor despite his condition. He tried to shift position and winced sharply. "Lie still," she admonished gently. "You have broken ribs, among other injuries." His eyes, though clouded with pain, held hers intently. "You called us family. To the nurse, I heard you, had he been awake when they arrived." She couldn't remember if she'd been the one to use that word or if it had been Sam. "Yes," she said simply, "because that's what we are, isn't it? What we've become." "What I've hoped we could be," he amended, his fingers tightening around hers. "Abigail, when the train went off the tracks, when I thought I might die, my only regret was not telling you clearly how much I love you." The words, spoken plainly despite his weakened state, washed over her like a benediction. "Adam, let me finish," he interrupted, determination giving strength to his voice. "I love you, not as my housekeeper or even as Sam's teacher. I love your intelligence, your courage, your kindness. I love the way you see the good in people, the potential in everything around you." His gaze held hers, unwavering. "I want to build a life with you, support your school, raise a family, grow old together at Cottonwood." Abigail felt tears spill down her cheeks, but they were tears of joy, not sorrow. "I came here to tell you something similar," she admitted. "When I thought I might have lost you, I realized with perfect clarity what I should have acknowledged months ago. I love you, Adam Xavier, and yes, I want that future too, all of it." His smile then was like sunrise breaking through clouds, brilliant despite his injuries, transforming his face with joy. "Does that mean you'll stay in Tucumcari at Cottonwood?" "Not just stay," she corrected, leaning closer. "Make it my home, our home." Adam lifted his uninjured hand to her cheek, cradling it gently. "I should have asked this properly with a ring on bended knee, but I find I can't wait another moment." His eyes, bright with emotion, held hers. "Abigail Lambert, will you marry me?" "Yes," she whispered without hesitation. "With all my heart, yes." She leaned down and gently, mindful of his injuries, pressed her lips to his in their first kiss, a tender, promising seal on the future they would build together. A discreet cough from the doorway interrupted the moment. They turned to find Sam awake, watching them with a grin that threatened to split his face. "About time," he declared, coming to stand beside the bed. "I was beginning to think I'd have to lock you two in the root cellar to get you to admit you're in love." Adam laughed, then immediately grimaced at the pain in his ribs. "Always the impatient one, Sam. Just practical," his brother countered, his smile softening to something more serious. "Life's too short to waste time, as we've all been reminded." He looked between them, genuine happiness lighting his features. "So, we're officially going to be a family now." "We already were," Abigail said, reaching out to include him in their circle, taking his hand as she still held Adam's. "This just makes it formal." In the weeks that followed, Adam's recovery progressed steadily. After 10 days in the hospital, he was deemed well enough for the careful journey back to Cottonwood, where his convalescence continued under Abigail's watchful care. By April, when the cottonwood trees along the river unfurled their first pale green leaves, Adam had regained much of his strength. Though his broken arm remained in a sling, he had resumed limited supervision of ranch operations and was increasingly restless with inactivity. "The doctor said you need another month before riding," Abigail reminded him one afternoon, finding him eyeing his saddle in the barn with obvious longing. "The doctor hasn't had to manage a ranch from an armchair," Adam grumbled, though without real heat. His expression softened as he turned to her. "But I've been a cooperative patient, haven't I?" "Reasonably cooperative," she allowed, stepping closer to straighten his collar. "Though I suspect that has more to do with your desire to be fully recovered for our wedding than any natural inclination toward patience." Adam caught her hand, bringing it to his lips. "Can you blame me? June seems an eternity away." Their wedding was planned for the first Saturday in June, when the weather would be favorable and the most pressing spring ranch work complete. It would be a significant event for Tucumcari, the prominent rancher, and the town's soon-to-be schoolteacher joining their lives before the entire community. "Just 8 more weeks," Abigail said, allowing herself to lean into his embrace, careful of his healing ribs. "Hardly an eternity. 8 weeks, 2 days, and approximately 14 hours, Adam corrected with a smile against her hair, "but who's counting?" They walked back to the house hand in hand, discussing preparations for both the wedding and the school, which would open its doors in September. The Territorial Education Board had approved Abigail's proposal with enthusiasm, providing partial funding to complement the tuition paid by families. The old meeting hall was being renovated, and already a list of prospective students had grown to nearly 40 children of various ages. That evening after dinner, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the western sky in brilliant hues of gold and crimson, Adam seemed unusually contemplative. "What are you thinking?" Abigail asked, noticing the distant look in his eyes. "About coins," he answered unexpectedly. "About how close I came to losing you before I ever really had you." She tilted her head questioningly. "I don't understand." "That day in the saloon when I first saw you counting your savings," he explained. "If I hadn't noticed those coins, if I hadn't found the courage to offer you a position here, you would have boarded a train for Boston by now, chasing a dream that didn't exist." Abigail considered this alternative path herself on an eastbound train, alone with her savings and her misplaced hope, never knowing the happiness she'd found at Cottonwood. "Perhaps," she acknowledged, "or perhaps something else would have brought us together. I've come to believe some things are meant to be, despite our best efforts to plan different outcomes." Adam reached for her hand, his thumb tracing the simple gold band he'd placed there, a temporary engagement ring, until the one he'd ordered from Denver arrived. "I'm not usually one for fate or destiny," he said. "I believe we make our own way in this world, but when I think about all the circumstances that aligned to bring you here to Cottonwood, to me," he shook his head in wonder, "it makes a man reconsider." "Either way," Abigail said softly, "I'm grateful. For the coins you saw, for the courage you showed in asking me to stay, for the patience you exhibited while I came to understand where I truly belonged." Adam lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her palm. "And where is that, Miss Lambert? Where do you truly belong?" "Here," she said without hesitation, "with you and Sam, at Cottonwood, in Tucumcari, building a school and a life that matters." Her voice grew thick with emotion. "Home isn't always where we expect to find it. Sometimes it finds us when we're too busy looking elsewhere." As twilight deepened around them, they remained on the porch, talking of their plans, their hopes, their shared future. The gold coins that had once represented Abigail's escape now formed part of the seed money for her school, transformed from a means of leaving into an investment in staying. In the end, it wasn't Boston or teaching or even the school in Tucumcari that had provided Abigail's true calling. It was love, unexpected, challenging, and ultimately far more fulfilling than any future she had imagined for herself when counting coins in a dusty saloon. The wedding day dawned bright and clear, with just enough breeze to stir the cottonwood leaves into a silver-green shimmer against the blue New Mexico sky. Abigail stood at the window of her room, soon to become their shared bedroom, watching early morning light bathe the ranch in golden radiance. For the first time in years, she felt completely at peace with her path. Boston, once so central to her dreams, had receded to a distant memory, replaced by the vibrant reality of her life at Cottonwood. The school would open in 3 months, fulfilling her desire to teach. Sam would leave for university in the fall, but with promises to return for holidays and summers. And Adam, her Adam, would be by her side through all of it, partner in life and love. A knock at the door interrupted her reverie. Clara entered, carrying a box tied with white ribbon. "Special delivery for the bride," announced the former saloon girl, who had remained Abigail's friend despite her changed circumstances. Clara had been delighted by Abigail's engagement and had eagerly accepted the invitation to be her attendant at the wedding. "What's this?" Abigail asked, accepting the package. "From your groom. Said to give it to you this morning before all the madness begins." Clara settled on the edge of the bed, clearly intending to watch the unwrapping. "Must be something special. He was mighty particular about you getting it early." Abigail carefully untied the ribbon and opened the box to find a letter resting atop tissue paper. She recognized Adam's bold handwriting immediately. "My dearest Abigail," it began. "On this day when you will make me the happiest of men, I wanted to share with you the moment I first began to love you. It wasn't when you accepted the position at Cottonwood, though I already admired you then. It wasn't during our evening conversations or our chess matches, though my affection grew with each passing day. It was that first day in the saloon when I saw you carefully counting coins, saving, planning, dreaming of a better future. In that moment, I glimpsed your determination, your hope, your unwillingness to accept circumstances as they were rather than as they could be. I knew then that you were extraordinary, though I couldn't have imagined how completely you would transform my life, my home, my very understanding of happiness. Beneath this letter is a gift not nearly as precious as the one you give me today by becoming my wife, but a symbol of where our journey began and the extraordinary path it has taken. All my love now and always, Adam, with tears blurring her vision. Abigail set aside the letter and carefully unfolded the tissue paper. Nestled within was a small, exquisitely crafted gold locket different from the one he had given her at Christmas, this one newly made. When she opened it, she gasped softly. Inside was not a photograph or a lock of hair, as might be expected, but a small, worn gold coin, one of the very coins she had been saving that day in the saloon. Somehow, Adam had obtained it, perhaps from her hidden cache or through some arrangement with Hank Stillwell. The coin had been polished to a bright gleam and secured within the locket as a permanent reminder. "It's perfect," Abigail whispered, closing the locket and pressing it to her heart. Clara peered at it curiously. "A coin, that's his romantic gesture. It's more meaningful than you could know," Abigail replied, unclasping the chain and securing it around her neck. The locket came to rest just below her throat, a tangible reminder of the journey that had brought her here. The wedding itself exceeded all expectations. The entire community of Tucumcari turned out, along with ranchers from surrounding properties, and even the territorial governor who had become acquainted with Adam through the cattle association. The ceremony was held beneath the cottonwood trees by the river, with Sam standing proudly as his brother's best man. When Adam saw Abigail walking toward him in her gown of ivory, silk, a creation Clara had helped her design, combining Eastern elegance with practical Western simplicity, his expression of wonder and love was so naked, so unguarded, that several guests were seen dabbing at their eyes. "You are breathtaking," he murmured as she reached him, taking her hands in his. "And you are everything I never knew I needed," she replied, her voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm her. Their vows, written together during the quiet evenings of Adam's recovery, spoke of partnership, respect, and unwavering love. They promised to support each other's dreams, to face life's challenges as one, and to create a home where love would always be the foundation. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Adam's kiss was both tender and possessive, a promise of the passion they would soon share and the lifetime commitment they had made. The celebration continued well into the night, with music, dancing, and enough food to feed the entire county. Abigail and Adam moved among their guests, accepting congratulations and well wishes, always finding their way back to each other's side as if drawn by an invisible force. Late in the evening, as the festivities began to wind down, Adam led his bride away from the gathering, toward the riverbank where they could hear the water's gentle murmur and see stars scattered like diamonds across the vast New Mexico sky. "Happy, Mrs. Xavier?" he asked, his arms encircling her waist as she leaned back against his chest. "Completely," she sighed, tilting her head to look up at him. "Though I might keep Lambert professionally for the school, Abigail Lambert Xavier, rather grand, don't you think? I think it suits you perfectly." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Teacher, wife, and eventually mother if you're willing." "Very willing," she assured him, turning in his arms to face him properly. "I want a family with you, Adam, children of our own to join this wonderful life we're building." His smile in the moonlight was tender. "I still can't quite believe you're mine, that you chose to stay here with me when you could have gone anywhere." Abigail reached up to touch the locket at her throat, the coin inside a reminder of how close she'd come to missing this happiness. "I didn't just stay, Adam, I came home." She rose on tiptoes to press her lips to his. "And I'm never leaving." As the years passed, their promises to each other proved true and enduring. The school in Tucumcari flourished under Abigail's direction, eventually expanding to a proper academy that drew students from throughout the territory. Adam's ranching operations prospered, and his leadership in territorial affairs earned him consideration for political office, though he consistently declined, preferring to influence progress from behind the scenes. Sam completed his education with honors and returned to New Mexico, establishing an agricultural research station adjacent to Cottonwood Ranch, where he developed innovative techniques for desert farming that transformed the region's productivity. As for Abigail and Adam, their greatest joy came in the children who gradually joined their family-first twins, a boy and girl who arrived a year after their wedding, then two more sons spaced several years apart, and finally, when Abigail was 40, a surprise daughter who completed their family circle. Through it all the triumphs and challenges, the growth of their community and their family, the foundation remained their love for each other, as solid and enduring as the land they called home. On their 25th wedding anniversary, surrounded by their children, Sam and his wife, and the many friends who had become extended family, Adam presented Abigail with a special gift, a leather-bound album chronicling their years together, from that first meeting in the saloon to their silver anniversary celebration. The final page held a photograph of them standing before the school building, now a substantial structure that bore a bronze plaque, Lambert Xavier Academy, founded 1883. Beneath the photo, Adam had written a simple inscription. She'd been saving passage money to leave. I saw the coins and said, "Please stay with me." Thank God she did. "Best decision I ever made," Abigail murmured, closing the album and looking up at the man who had become the center of her world, his hair now threaded with silver. The lines around his eyes deepened by years of New Mexico sun and countless smiles, but his gaze still holding that same steady warmth that had first begun to capture her heart. "For both of us," Adam replied, taking her hand and bringing it to his lips in a gesture that, even after 25 years, still made her heart beat faster. "For both of us."